morning. It is July the 8th, and if it's a Tuesday at 10 a.m., that means it's time to track the tropics. From sunny Central Florida, I'm WESH 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
And in Savannah, Georgia, I'm WJCL 22 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Nelson.
All right, so Jeremy, we had a couple of systems here the last couple of weeks, but it's actually nice and quiet right now.
Yeah, and this is something we were discussing. Didn't look like much on models. If something was going to happen, it would just have to kind of develop quickly, may not stick around that long. And over the holiday weekend, I know the weather wasn't the best for parts of the Carolinas, especially Myrtle Beach into North Carolina from Saturday into Sunday. But most of us, as we were talking about last week, that area of interest didn't do a whole lot down in Florida. I'm sure you can speak to that, but it did check off another name on the list,
Yep.
and it was a tropical storm.
And of course, it moved up kind of your direction, didn't do kind of any massive impacts to Florida, didn't do any massive impacts to your area, but there was some significant flooding in parts of the Carolinas, Jeremy.
Yeah, it looked like a Chapel Hill area. They had 6 inches plus in some locations in a short amount of time. So you don't need these big blockbuster systems to cause a lot of issues in terms of just the freshwater flooding. And then at the coastline, an issue we've had here in the last week, we've had 3 fatalities at our beaches from
Yeah.
drownings.
Oh, wow.
And one of those was directly tied to that rip current risk that we saw with Chantal offshore. So over the weekend, we did have I think it was actually on July 4th, so on Friday, our winds turned a little more northeast,
Yep.
rip current risk increased, and on one of our barrier islands, there was a drowning out there. So those are some of the indirect impacts you may not think
Yeah.
about, whether it's hurricane, tropical system. They can be pretty far offshore, and you get that wind direction just correct, and the rip currents are sort of that hidden risk.
Yeah, well, and doesn't that also show that that the impacts from these tropical systems are not just where's the eye going to go? It's so much broader than that, and I think that that's a really good testament to how the National Hurricane Center over the last 20 years has pivoted away from this is landfall, this is landfall, this is landfall, Saffir Simpson scale, category this, making landfall here. No, it's more along the lines of, okay, if you're on this spot, you're going to be looking at more of a wind threat. If you're in this spot, it's going to be flood. And I think that as we have gotten better understanding in the science of it, we've been able to better do that. So, isn't that just such a proof positive to it, Jeremy? The good news right now, though, my friend, is looking outside the entire Atlantic basin continues to be nice and quiet. Chat about that.
Yeah, we still have a lot of dusty Saharan air that is just covering parts of the main development region into the Caribbean, a little bit of the Gulf. So the 3 named storms that we've had have all eluded that dusty, dry air and kind of been on the fringe of where that core of the dust is at. And if
Mm.
we're going to see any development coming up, that's probably going to be the case, but right now it looks pretty quiet. There was some kind of disorganized showers and thunderstorms east of the Bahamas
Yep.
there,
Yep.
but it does not really appear like that will develop into anything, and it's not highlighted by the National Hurricane Center.
Right. Well, and that's more of kind of an upper level feature, right? Which is very normal. And you can see it,
Mhm.
excuse me, you can see it there on the satellite imagery. So long as that is doing what it's doing, if you can give me a few sets, Chantal, I'm just trying to see if there's, of course, I don't have it set up that way because why would I? I was going to say, if there's a quick way for me to focus in on the Bahamas. I'll get it though. But the overall idea is that we are still in kind of the early part of hurricane season. It's during the month of August that we really typically ramp up. And looking at some of the statistics, and Jeremy, I'm just going to jump right into this if you don't mind. Some of the statistics, it's kind of interesting. So we are above average in the overall, like, naming regime, right? We've had 3 named storms so far this year. The average is 1.7. Last year, we had 3 named storms, but they have been fairly weak named storms. We've had 2.5 days with activity. The normal through today is 4. But the ACE score, okay, 1.5 ACE this year, 3.9 last year. 3.9 is the 30-year average, I should say. And the ACE score today last year was 35.4. Of course, that was because of Beryl. That was because there was a much stronger B named storm. But even though we're kind of running ahead of schedule, we've not had any kind of hurricanes. So in some metrics, everything we've seen is pretty weak, and in some metrics, we're a little behind in terms of the season.
Yeah, maybe in the intensity, the duration of the storms, the ones that we've had named, two of those were named for, I believe, like 12 hours.
Yep.
And then Chantal didn't last all that long. Was a tropical depression. Then I think it was Saturday morning. It was a tropical storm, and then it started to move inland on Sunday. So about a day or so where it was named, it was a tropical storm, just a rainmaker. But yeah, as you alluded to, so far, I don't want to say there's been no impacts from the season because there was certainly some flooding in parts of the Carolinas. But overall, sort of quieter start, and it's really been a month plus now of dusty, dry air, just sort of choking off that main development region.
Yeah, well, I mean, and just look at that satellite imagery right now. The entire Caribbean is completely filled, the Gulf fairly filled, but there is a massive plume of Saharan dust just blowing across the open Atlantic. And as long as that stays, the tropics are going to be nice and quiet. Now, Jeremy and I, briefly off air, so to speak, chatted about this. You know, does this blast of Saharan dust, does this quieter start to hurricane season give indicators of the rest of the hurricane season quiet? And the answer, the short answer is no, because while we have maybe in some respects been off to a slower-ish start, um, you go back to 2022 and it was an even quieter start. And that was when Ian and Nicole blasted through Florida. And of course, we had just a ton of impacts from hurricanes that year.
Yeah, so quiet start doesn't mean that's how peak season will go or how things will finish. It's great when you do get off to a quiet start. Sometimes you get off to a fast start, and that can spell trouble down the road. But we just really have to be prepared. Mid August, that first probably 10 days or so of October, and that stretch in there, that is the peak of hurricane season when the bulk of the activity occurs. But look at last year, we still had Raphael and Sarah, and those were November storms.
Right, right. So it just kind of goes to show, like you said. Now, we do our long range forecasting, so we know the parts of the pattern to watch. But as long as there's Saharan dust, it's not like those are going to be doing any kind of major producing of systems.
Yeah, and we do our long range forecast, and there was a question someone asked me like, "Hey, the Chantal, how did that fit in?" Well, we went back. We know the duration that we use to create our forecast. We didn't necessarily single that one out as a standalone storm to highlight. We kind of said, "Hey, that part of the coastline has an average chance of landfall this season," but we did find the little trough throughout the pattern. So I think what we try to do is highlight what we think will be the biggest players in the hurricane season.
Yep.
So we didn't necessarily have that one highlighted, but then we went sort of back and looked and we're like, oh, I guess there was a little thing there off the coast.
Right. Well, and like you said, if you highlight every storm system that's going to show up, right? Every single storm system that's going to do its thing. The problem is you'd highlight the entire coastline. So as you mentioned, Jeremy, right? Like looking at our forecast for this year, we highlighted the Gulf because while yes, the east coast of the United States could see impacts, and certainly we saw that over the weekend, those impacts are more average chance. And it was not a very strong system that impacted the East Coast. Whereas we're looking at the bigger parts of the pattern being more Gulf based this year. Again, just like last
Yeah,
year.
yeah, and I mean, we already had in we focused on the continental U.S. our coastline, but we did have buried down kind of that extreme southern Gulf area, so that was a Gulf system. The other one, the first one, Andrea, that was like more like north central Atlantic area, east of Bermuda, and then Chantal was off the southeast coastline. So I think what we'll do is we will note Chantal, and then we'll once we get to that part of the pattern again coming up, it'd be something that we certainly is now a little bit more on our radar.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's not like we're changing our because we don't change our
No,
forecast. But it's just maybe it's another one
no.
of those like, well, It wasn't a part of our forecast, but we did see it produce Chantal. So then it's a matter of, yeah, just and this is going to be the venue that we discuss it when it comes back around. We're going to be discussing it and doing that sort of thing. Kind of like there's one part of the pattern that the models have started teasing a little bit, Jeremy. I don't know if you wanted to chat a little bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, we are always looking ahead, and we've had a couple models now show sort of a cluster of thunderstorms in the central northern Gulf, or maybe a weaker area of low pressure sometime by the middle part of next week, and that fits a time frame that we had highlighted in the middle part of July. Does it mean something tropical will develop? No, but it is something we highlighted a long time ago, and it'll be something we'll just kind of monitor. So whether it develops or not, I think this could be a pretty heavy rainmaker for parts of the Gulf Coast.
Right. And again, it goes back to how our long range forecast works. It's these are not showing hurricane dates, these are rather just showing pattern recognition dates where we know this part of the pattern is going to show another signal. So from the coast of about Louisiana through the Big Bend of Florida, and what we can actually do here is we can show on the different computer forecast models. So this is the most recent run of the American GFS model, and I'll show all these orange shades, that's high pressure. Okay. And what we're watching here is you notice how right around Louisiana, it's nothing significant, but it's just eroding that area of high pressure. If we go back 2 model runs, though, there's a little piece of energy right there around the Big Bend of Florida, and it just kind of cruises around from Florida over to like Louisiana. It showed there on the GFS for days and days and days, and then it kind of went away. If we look at the European model here, okay, the 0Z is the only one that is the most recent run that goes out that far. But I want you to watch, first off, watch real quick, some sort of a broad area of low pressure this Sunday out east of Florida, whether that happens outside of the Bahamas, whether that happens or not concerning. But there again, is some sort of a piece of energy in that same time frame. So even though the GFS isn't really showing it, the Euro is hinting at some sort of a weak, slow moving area of low pressure, which Jeremy directly goes into our discussion of what we saw on our long range forecasting.
Yeah, because what's the sort of the date range there that
On
you're
the
looking at
European, it's kind
on
of
where the blue was showing up there?
yeah, the 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd.
Okay.
Yeah, which
Yeah, so
which
that
there's the dates for our forecast that we put out back in March, excuse me, in February of this year. So it's in that window and it's in that location.
Yeah, and so as we go into next week, we'll see if low pressure forms there. Just remember the latest system that we just had off the southeast coast. While it was sort of a very broad area of interest, it ended up that low pressure formed. It was a named storm. So as we look ahead now,
Yeah.
we're kind of highlighting this area that's fairly broad, maybe in the central or northern Gulf. So that could be something of interest as we go into maybe later next week.
Right, right. So it we'll watch it, but again, it's like and I credit Jeremy for teaching this to me, right? But like if you look at the patterns, when you start to see models hinting at something that you've absolutely seen in your forecasting pattern recognition, that really causes you to watch it closely. Not because you're knowing that it's going to form into anything strong. If the models aren't saying it, then there's a different confidence there. But to watch it again closely, because while maybe this July version, Jeremy, doesn't get feisty, we know that if there's another indication of it, that August late to September early time frame may end up being a stronger signal there.
Yes, and as we always say when we show these potential return days, this is when the pattern's returning. It's not saying, hey, these are guaranteed times where there will be a tropical system or some big, huge hurricane developing. Last year, probably our number one part of the pattern did produce Debbie, and then it produced Helene. So that had two systems with it. That was one of the real key parts of the pattern last year. So we will see if we get a signal this time around,
Right.
maybe a disturbance in the Gulf, and then that would really have to be watched, likely to close out August.
Well, and it's kind of interesting. It's like I look at Hurricane Ian. I was in Hurricane Ian coverage, tracking it, and a viewer grabbed a tweet of mine from like months earlier, the version previous, where there was an upper low in the Gulf or something. And I had mentioned in that tweet, it was like, oh man, we're going to have to watch the recycle of this on these dates. And
Hmm.
I'm in hurricane coverage on those dates, and I'd forgotten I shot that tweet out, but that viewer was like, Burris, there it is, and so again, it's just a matter of pattern recognition. It may not be anything but a broad sloppy low this time, but again, weeks out as this pattern recycles again, it may be a completely different entity.
Yeah, and along those lines, for us last year, we were impacted. I mentioned that Debbie and Helene, same parts of the cycling
Right.
pattern last year. So we had Debbie last year, and then just a few days after that. So a little side note. Each year, I've been helping here the last couple of years. The Port of Savannah help them with some of their hurricane preps before the season gets started. And then they had a question for me after Debbie last year, and then I was like, well, you know what? Let's really watch around September, like 26th, give or take a day. And then boom, Helene. And then afterwards, they were like, whoa, that was quite the forecast. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, that was one of the big things in the forecast we put out on March the 1st last year. So it's always good for people to kind of just glance back, review our forecast. Is every single thing in the end going to be perfect? No, but we always judge that after the season is
Right.
done, and our numbers are our numbers.
Well, and you can't expect perfection, right? Like we're looking to the future months and months and months ahead of time. So guidance is guidance. It helps us out. It helps us to understand everything, and it's pattern recognition at the end of the day. So yeah. Questions that anybody has for us, real fast? I think we're in a quiet, and I think that the summation, my thought, if I'm honest, is let's enjoy the quiet, because when this dust shuts off, I think we're going to get awful busy awful quickly. And we know that this pattern, there's like a couple of week lull, and then there's a nice block of activity, so it's kind of on and off and on and off. But once this dust stops, Jeremy, I think it's going to be go time.
Yeah, and also there were parts of the pattern that we had highlighted where at the same time there was like a low in the Gulf, a low near
Right.
the Bahamas,
Right.
a low in the Southwest Atlantic. There were a lot of lows. So if this happens, and we think it will at some point, the dust shuts off, like you said, I think things could ramp up because the water temperatures that I looked at now are pretty much all average to above average in a
Right.
lot of the key areas of the
Yep.
tropics. So there's plenty of warm ocean water and sea surface water for these storms to thrive off from.
Yeah, so this is the temperature anomaly map. So what we're looking at is, gray is average. So just in looking around here, right? Like the main development region is a little above, it's not significantly above average, but it is a little above average. Look at the Gulf, look at the Caribbean. The extreme southern Caribbean, there's a little spot of some cooler air, but or water, but generally speaking, it is warmer than average. So to that point, Jeremy, I would say that yeah, you know, we atmospherically, environmentally, we are ready for hurricane season to get going bigly. We just need that Saharan dust to stop. And none of us are hoping for it. If you're watching, Jeremy and I are like the
Right.
anti-hypers. There's so, oh my gosh, there's
Yeah.
so, the hype that I saw and continue to see when it comes to the tropics is remarkable. So, look, you be the judge, friends, but you're not, I know Jeremy and I strive not to be any kind of a hype machine.
Well, I think you can just look at early this season in late May when the GFS was producing like hurricane after hurricane after
Right.
hurricane in
Right.
these like 240 plus hour forecasts. And we were like, let's hold on here. Let's not buy into it. It's the only model showing it.
Yep.
There were some maybe weather enthusiasts in various parts of social media posting all that stuff.
Yep.
So then we then kind of have to answer the questions. And we
Right.
were like, no, let's back off on this. It doesn't necessarily fit something that we are seeing, and it's just a standalone model showing it right now. So that's kind of a good example early in the season where we had models or model showing some kind of crazy activity, and it ended up being nothing.
Well, and you be the judge, friends, of who you trust and who you don't trust, right? But I'm disappointed, and we don't have to get too into the weeds on this. But I'm disappointed that I'm seeing meteorologists posting hype more and more because they're all about clicks and all this. And so, just all I would say is, friends, consider your sources. That's all. I think that's a good place to stop it, right? Like I think that's a good place to stop.
Yeah, and I think it spills over into almost so many aspects of life on social media now, where you see people that say they're experts on
Yep.
this, and then they are undercutting true experts. And there's a lot of opinions out there, and try to find the people that you really trust,
Right.
that have the experience. And when it comes to weather forecasting, hopefully we are your trusted source.
Yeah, yeah. And we're always going to try and make sure to give everything that we can and answer those questions, but we're not going to just come out and go crazy with it. But for right now, look, if you were out on a ship in 98% of that Atlantic basin, I would say, Jeremy, it's a sunny, beautiful, light oceanic, breezy kind of thing. And I love that. Let's hope that flipping continues for as long as it can before hurricane season really gets going.
Yes, that would be a good thing. Only around 12% of all tropical activity since 1851 have been in June and July. So you get the idea. These are supposed to be quieter months.
Yeah, yeah, but we know that, here we are, we're on the 8th day of July. When you look at it's not a bell curve, but it's the Atlantic curve, right? So just look at how things ramp up late July, but into August. I mean, it's just exponential growth there. So it's going to take some time, but we're going to get busy. So now it's a good reminder. Now is the time to make sure that you are stocked up. And again, you don't have to be rich to you take your milk jug when you're done, you rinse it out real nice, have it ready. That way, if you need to put water in it for hurricane, go through a hurricane supply checklist. And I know that our company, Jeremy, does such a great job of arming us as meteorologists with the tools to warn and help our friends and in our community. So, my folks, wesh.com/hurricanes. And for the folks in the low country, South Carolina and Georgia, WJCL.com/hurricanes. That's a hurricane section. All the survival guide is there and our long range forecasts.
Yep, just yeah, be ready. Hopefully, we don't have anything too imminent, but next week we may have. Some people like to say there's a lemon highlighted. We'll see if we get that yellow shaded area
Oh,
highlighted
I
somewhere in the
hate
Gulf.
that. A lemon. It's
Yeah,
the
I'm not a
color
big
yet.
fan either.
Like I feel. I mean, you're a little older than I am, right? We don't have to talk age exactly, but like you're a little older than I am, right?
I guess, yeah.
So, did you get into the get off my lawn phase of life a couple of years ago? Because I feel like I've gotten there.
Uh, that's probably been going. I feel like maybe as soon as you have kids, that phase starts to kick in a little bit.
Okay, yeah, there's a lemon highlighted. Like, why do people talk like that? Good gravy. Anyway, that's enough. All right. Questions, comments, concerns from our folks in the viewing audience. Somebody was asking. Jamie Lopez on YouTube was asking if we use the recurring cycle to integrate into our week-to-week forecasts. Jeremy, why don't you start with that one?
Well, I think in we do somewhat bigger parts of the pattern, key things. There's a about a week before this disturbance should come through our area here in whether it's the Gulf, Southeast, Florida. That thing we highlighted for next week, that potential there. Well, about a week before that, 5 to 7 days before that, I've always had some heavy rains or higher potential for heavy rains in my where I'm at in Southeast Georgia in the Low Country. So that's actually coming up here sometime either like this week or later or around the weekend. So I would say anywhere from tomorrow through late week, there's potential in my area. We could get some pretty heavy rain. So
Yeah.
day to day forecasting, maybe not, but we certainly highlight bigger parts, whether it's colder snaps, above average temperatures. There's a lot of use for this. So it's not just tropical forecasting.
Absolutely. And I would say that while maybe it's not like an operational thing where I'm sitting here and day to day, like you said, Jeremy, not day to day incorporate, well, the pattern should give me more rain today than what the models are saying. It's more of a, well, I know that this pattern gets wetter. So maybe as I'm looking at the models, maybe I kind of keep that in mind. Or this one has produced severe weather. So maybe keep that in mind. Or looking at the long term models, knowing that something should pop up in the northern Gulf and be a big rainmaker, at least once the models start to dive into it, I know. So like the GFS has removed the slow Gulf low, at least has brought its depth in the low down a little bit. I would suspect that that's going to come back because it's not cheating, but it's knowing the pattern, and that pattern recognition piece plays out. So I think it's kind of more of a, the recurring cycle gives you a chance to step back, look at the forest through the trees, and get a bit of a broader scope as you're doing your day to day forecasting.
Yeah, and a lot of times something, and sometimes we should look at it more. Sometimes we get a weather feature that occurs, and then we look back and we're like, oh,
Right.
there it was. This is
Right.
right on schedule. So I think we have a good framework and sort of outline for hurricane season. And if things develop, very likely we've had them highlighted. And if they don't develop and we just keep dusty, dry air, then it's a win for everyone.
I like it. I like it. Either way. All right. So one question, and then we'll make this the last question. It's on your page, Jeremy. Why are these thunderstorms so strong and bad with lots of lightning? So are these hurricanes going to be more powerful this year? That's coming from Jennifer Wood on your page.
Well, I think so. Around here, typically our thunderstorms are heavy rainmakers, and also we oftentimes do get a lot of cloud to ground lightning strikes. So, with us, our precipitable water, which is moisture content in the air, and you can feel that almost on a daily basis with our higher humidity. You get these thunderstorms that develop. They're huge up in the atmosphere. They have all this moisture, and you start wringing that out, and you can pick up like an inch or two of rain in about 30 minutes. So that's why, at least in our area here, these tropical downpours can lead to a little bit of sort of street flooding in much rarer situations like flash flood warnings. So
Yeah.
we are, I would say tomorrow's a day we kind of have to watch the storms in my area a little bit more
Right.
for that potential for some pretty heavy rain.
Yeah. Yeah. So we continue on, but at least there's nothing in the tropics. All right. You have anything else to add, Jeremy?
No, not right now.
I love it. All right. Listen, from sunny and beautiful, humid, moist Central Florida, I'm West 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
And in Savannah, Georgia, I'm WJCL 22 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Nelson.
Thank you all for hanging out. We'll see you next Tuesday at 10 o'clock.